Hello, good evening. Welcome back to week 2 of my Molten Live No-NAMM. There's No-NAMM. Whatever happened to NAMM? Live streams this evening. You're very welcome to join us back here again at the beginning of another week. And this evening we have a potentially controversial subject, or at least an interesting subject. We're talking about journeys through modular, and in particular the idea, the possibility of leaving Eurorack. Don't tell anyone. It's not something that we tried to promote, but it does happen. And this evening, to talk about this, someone who's been through their own journey and recently-ish, I think we lose track of time, has moved from Eurorack into other things. So we're going to talk about that a great deal. So with me this evening is Noir Et Blanc Vie, also known as Stephen, who I'll bring in now, and we'll see what occurs. Hi, Stephen. How are you doing, sir?
What's up? What's up? Hey, everybody.
It's great to see you. We know each other from the legendary now Atonement event, which happened far too many years ago.
Legendary because it only happened once. And so it's like if it never happens again, we went to the one and only. So
we did.
Technically legends in that sense.
And I persuaded you to come on a couple of videos. We talked about Behringer and bits and pieces. It was great. It was an interesting few days spent in the company of other weirdos and creative people. That an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, totally different than what I think I thought it was going to be. I went in with a very different mindset, which, I don't know. Maybe we can talk about, or maybe we shouldn't talk about. But regardless, it was very cool to be in a place I never been, and then with people who you only see on your TV. That was probably the weirdest part about it. I met Cuckoo before, and I'd met Jade before, but aside from those two, everybody was people I'd seen. And it's weird. It's like obviously we're not like celebrity people, but anyone who you experience on your TV more than you experience them in real life, and then you meet them in real life, it's just it's bizarre in a way.
It is. You have this sense that you know them to some degree because they're familiar to you. You're a very familiar face to me now, even though, as I say, we've met in person just the once at the one event. But it's a really strange thing. But actually, I mean that sort of kicks us off a little bit into our conversation, because the first time I saw you, I became aware of you on the internet, was that I had not long started doing Eurorack modular videos. I'd been bitten by this thing. It had grabbed me somehow. And I thought, right, I'm gonna look at this and do this. I'm gonna make videos on it. That's going to be fascinating. People are going to love this. This will be awesome. And so I did things like I upgraded my camera. I was fighting over what microphones to use, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it, trying to learn software and bits and pieces. And I just got up to about like a 720p sort of level of YouTube video, and I was feeling good about it. And then, like I don't know, like a Scorsese movie. You came into shot on Twitter, I think it was, with like a single light bulb trailing past. You were beautifully lit, and you sounded beautiful, looked beautiful, and said, "Hey, Eurorack." And I thought, that's it. I'm done. I can't compete with this. So, I mean, you may well have been doing all sorts of things before that I just wasn't aware of, and then up you pop, just completely fantastic looking and with fantastic content. And I thought, wow, that really ups the game. So that was my first experience of you, sir. I hope that's not embarrassing for you. But
thanks for making that experience so much more than it seems. It's me in my house with like a the darkest black sheet possible, and the bulb I bought from Home Depot that like flickers if you choose the wrong frame rate, with like credit collectors calling me. That's the real behind the scenes about the things that I had done. So I had shot like music videos and stuff, but like, yeah, Yeah, thanks for making it sound like my life was put together back then. It's 2015 or something when I'm making these things.
Yeah, it's what we project. I mean, you say you've made music videos and stuff. So tell us a little bit about your
Yeah.
history.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'm like a musician, pianist by. I call myself more a keyboardist because piano's to me its own like instrument. But yeah, went to school for piano, and in college I realized very quickly, just based on where I went to college, that like I was sort of a big fish in a small pond. I was, really good for where I grew up, like Orange County, but I went to college with people who came from all over the globe, and quickly realized my roommates were far better than I was, and it was very. It put into my mind at that point, you can't do this. You can't do this. You cannot do this as a touring performing person, right? So I had to think of other things to do, and what it kind of came down to was producing music, right? I can produce music in the studio. I can play instruments and stuff. So, anyways, really worked hard at that. Made a few albums over the years with some groups I had met around the time. There's a band called like Little Red Radio here in Los Angeles. A few rappers. I did a bunch of work, studio work, and it kind of was going well, but it was always not really working out. So I end up kind of getting, doing regular jobs, working in studios, working in media. And by working in media, I started to be able to work on cutting video. And so I cut video. I'm like, oh, I like this thing. So I started shooting some little music videos, shot music videos for myself, just for songs I did. And then, YouTube, and I always say, I never watched YouTube before 2015. I literally did not watch YouTube before 2015. And I turned on YouTube, and I liked video games. So I saw this guy, his name was James Rolfe. He's the angry video game nerd. And I realized, I said, this guy's been making real shows for, at that point, like 5 years. So I was like, I could do this, like make like a show and put it on the internet like that. That's what I want to do. Like I want to make like shows. It lets me do my video stuff and my music stuff at the same time. I'm still kind of doing gigs, studio work in that time, making music, but really just got drawn in by, the people who had made video game shows, right? Not so much demos, but like shows. And I was just like, it's a video platform. Let's make a show. And yeah, then Eurorack became popular, and my money was gone on an American Express credit card. And I guess that's where we end up, sort of starting the journey, right?
Yeah.
2015, 2016.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, I think I was like a follower of Felicia Day and Will Wheaton and those sorts of nerdy people, the Guild and stuff like that, which kept me entertained on YouTube. But I was doing reviews and stuff, I think since 2012, 2013, something like that.
Really? I wish I could.
But very sporadically. It's only been in the last. See, it's long now because we're in flipping 22. I mean, you're talking about 2016.
It's crazy.
That's like 5-6 years ago. That's, so we've been doing it far too long, I think. But it was, I think, 2016, 2017. Yeah, that's when I started poking away at Eurorack. That seemed to be the time. That was like that first, well, not the first wave. There's been plenty of waves. I remember ignoring it in the 90s, in the 2000s. But so whatever wave it was of popularity that kind of Div Kid, I suppose, brought into being.
Yes.
That was the wave that we found ourselves on, I think.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's weird to say why it started. Probably here's why I think it started. I live here right next to Burbank, like 5 minutes away from what is now Perfect Circuit. And Perfect Circuit was an online shop, like run by literally the owner on like eBay for like years before. So I had talked with Perfect Circuit in the virtual format, but Perfect Circuit opened their storefront like in 2014 or something. And I'm right next to the Eurorack at that point. I had been exposed to Eurorack. One of my a producer like acquaintances. His name's Dewan Parker. He did a ton of stuff for like Eminem and Dr. Dre. Really great producer and keyboardist. He went to Berkeley, and so I knew him from his studio, which is down the street, and he was into Eurorack in like 2008. He showed me his Dofer system in 2008. It was like a small A100 system in 2008, and I was just like, so like, as I'm keyboard, right? I'm like, this thing doesn't play enough notes. And he wasn't really into it. He just liked to have it. So yeah, I got caught up watching DivKid videos in 2014, but then actually had the ability to touch things in like 2014, 15. And like you said, yeah, it didn't really kick off until like 2017. Like, and then it was like crazy. It was almost like a brand new thing at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, what was it about it that you found enticing? What drew you in?
I mean, I don't even want to say it, but like realistically, I was really only able to feel like Eurorack made sense once the Moog Mother 32 boats or whatever came out from Moog. So I didn't really get the fun, like, Eurorack modules have changed. They've hybridized. They become so much more than they were. The Mother 32 was like, oh, wait, I can see the value in something that costs like $500, and you have something I'm familiar with, which is Moog. I had been playing the Little Fatty live for years at that point. So I know Moog. I know what the keyboard is because it has the little, chromatic keyboard there,
thing,
the 1 octave thing. Has got a sequencer, the filter. It was all very like, this makes sense. So I bought 2 of those, and like I bought like Guitar Center, like very, very first ones, and then I bought the Maths, which people hate me for saying. Whatever. I bought Maths and I bought Herb Verb, right? So I had 4 modules, and I bought that Dofer A100 case, right? Yeah, that was the only reason. The Mother 32s made it make sense that I can get sort of a duophonic sequencer and for a cheaper price, and it makes sense. I still to this day would never consider myself good at modular. I like to make music, and I like blinky shiny things. But people ask me all the time questions very deep, and I just say, Robin, DivKid, like, these are the people who've sat there. They've thought about voltages. I know that I turn the LFO, it goes woo, and hopefully it sounds good. And I know how to get to getting into it. I know the mistakes I made, right? All the financial mistakes I made. Because realistically, my first Eurorack was about $2,200, and it was all on like one American Express credit card. And it was this very poor idea, but I did that. So, yeah.
Well, it happens. You have to find a way in some way. And there is a cost that mounts very quickly as you go, because you need a case, you need a power supply, and then you have a module that doesn't do a whole lot by itself. I need it to do this. And then apparently I need another thing which goes wibbly wibbly, which makes that one go. Yeah. And then when you combine that through that one, and so on and so on. We're familiar with that, that road you take down the shop aisles, picking these things up.
And things were more expensive too. There was no tip-top Mantis for $179 back then. It just didn't exist. There was the smallest case I could buy from Perfect Circuit in 2014 or whatever that was a A100 case from Dofer, which was like which was literally $380, and it was like an open box unit. So like there was no budget, and that's why the Moog made sense. It was like I think it was 600, so it was like $599 or something, and you're getting all that. Whereas there was nothing to touch that at the time. Like nothing touched a Mother 32 in 2014 or 15 when that came out. So,
and to build that in Eurorack would cost you twice as much, at the very least. And
And you
that's,
have to know more.
yeah, you did. I mean, that's kind of my starting point is exactly the same, the Mother 32. And from there,
Mhm.
I then essentially bought that in modular form in order to expand upon it. Plus a maths, because everybody
Yeah.
said I needed a maths. And I still don't really know why, but you know, it's had its use over the years.
Yeah. If people realize how much money, and I like Make Noise, I think Make
Yeah.
Noise makes great stuff. It's just like, I mean, you know, there's a fanboyism over the maths module, and I understand the maths module. I just don't understand why so many people are so like crazy over the maths module. Like I get it. Like it is a great module. It's very functional.
Mm.
I can do lots of stuff with it, but at the same time, I gauge everything by fun and ease of use. And I'm not going to ever sit there and say the way in which that module is written and the what do you call it? The labeling. I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, this is like I know what to do." It's just like it's a great module. I'm sorry. Okay.
No,
I apologize.
I kind of agree. I mean, I haven't used mine for a long time. It's in my bad rack, which is on the edge of the desk, which is the rack that isn't actually plugged in. And I sometimes
maths support system here.
Yes, and I sometimes bring it out to solve a problem, like I need just some voltage, for instance, because it generates voltage, or I've ran out of envelopes, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I only ever really use it for envelopes anyway. That was its function. It seemed a really big module to do that, but that's the thing.
I mean, I'm looking at it over my shoulder. And, you know, in a way, I kind of feel like that sometimes. It's like if I don't know, for what I use it for, there's modules that are a quarter of the size and do what makes sense to me. Yeah. I was brought into maths because people told me to do maths. And this was a big issue that I kept talking about of why I had a sort of just a disconnect from Eurorack was people kept telling me what's good instead of me deciding for myself, what do I want to do? And in my like Eurorack series, made it very clear, decide what you want to do and then start buying. Whereas me, I started in the world of the guy at Perfect Circuit told me this was what you should do. And so I did that thing. And, you know,
well, it's like that movie High Fidelity, isn't it? We go into the record shop and there's Jack Black loading you up with records. Oh, you haven't got this one. You need to have this one, man.
Exactly.
And so on. And that happens. But I mean, I think in some ways people have similar journeys in that respect, because the conundrum you get into, or the paradox, is that people tell you, oh, yeah, so what is it you want to do? It's like, well, I don't know what I want to do. I just kind of like this idea of fiddling around with things. Yes, but what sound are you trying to make? I don't know. I just want to try it. And so you end up not really knowing, and then realizing that I wish I knew what it was I wanted to do before I started buying these modules.
Yes.
But at the same time, you have to start somewhere. Yeah. You have to start.
Yeah, that becomes the problem, is that I remember I actually bought the maths and the herb verb before the Mother 32 and they were out. I just knew they were coming, and I was like, well, I want to preemptive this, right? So imagine having already invested what is like $400 or $500 for maths, $405 for herb verb, and the $400 case. I'm like already at $1,300. And while, I can sit here and say, oh yeah, I could make like an oscillator with maths. Sure. It doesn't make sense for like what I'm trying to do. And it's so much more expensive, like, to get into it. So it's so like, actually I put up a thing on Twitter, maybe you saw it or not. Somebody wrote a comment to me last week or some time, and we're like, I just got approved for a loan to start with like Eurorack. And I'm like sitting over there like, good Lord, the amount of times I've ruined my life by opening a credit card. I mean, I will always say the two things that probably ruined my life was maxing out a credit card for Eurorack and maxing out a Guitar Center credit card for my Prophet 6. It's just like, it's just not worth it in the end. This sounds so negative. I love gear. Everyone knows this. It's great. But it's just like, I'm saying practically, Prophet 6 is not going to at $3,000 not going to do something that a soft synth with musical talent is going to do at free or $99. Sure, it might give you a slightly different sound, but like, you know, change a little something and it's close enough, I guess. Eurorack's a little harder. It's very nuanced. It's very like niche. It's very specific. I wouldn't say you can do things like a keyboard, but like taking out, I just think that going into debt for something that is your hobby, extreme debt, can be a bit of a bad place to start, maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, sports fans out there, that's good advice. Is be careful. I mean, if anyone's trying to emulate my journey, do know that I'm attempting to run a business, and so my
Yes.
business is buying and selling and moving through and receiving Eurorack modules and bits and pieces. So I'm very, very fortunate, and I understand my position of fortunateness in this. But I work bloody hard to make that happen, you know. So it's not like it's just, oh, he must have loads of cash laying about. Well, no, everything is a calculated
Yes.
decision, if you know what I mean. And you know, I'm sure I've overspent, but I'll sell back
Yes.
things and claw back things and work harder in order to pay those things off, you know. But
And they can't write it off. Most people aren't writing off their gear purchases like we probably can. So
no, this
it's
is
kind of
true.
one of those things.
So yeah, well, so I mean, obviously, I think we can put a pin in the idea that it's expensive and put that somewhere, and talk about that in a bit. But in terms, before we start to talk about coming out the other side, what was it about Eurorack? What did Eurorack bring to your creativity, if at all, if anything, or did it stifle it?
I remember specifically making, and this is before any me being thinking about YouTube or something. I made a patch once with the Mother 32s, which I wish I could remember this patch. And this kind of started the thought process about, whoa, what is it really bringing? I made a patch once with just the two Mother 32s doing a cool sequence, and the LFO and the math module. It's not just LFOs, I know. And the Erber. And it was such a cool patch. I remember, and so I plugged it into like my Zoom and I recorded it and I put it on Instagram. Now it's not even on my Instagram now because it's that old of a thing, right? My Instagram was like born like 2016, right? So like, and I made this patch and it was so cool. I don't know where the heck that patch is now. I don't know what I did. I have no idea how I did it. I just plugged in a bunch of things and it was great, right?
Yeah.
But then I remembered, I said, oh, I want to make another patch. Obviously it's next day. It was great. I heard it. I recorded it. And then I was like, oh, okay. The next patch I made it sounded like ass. So I was like, okay, here we are.
You should have bought another pair of Mother 32s. You see, that's the answer right there.
Exactly. I realized very quickly that like it's like hardware where you have to. I grew up working in like a studio around here called Track Record, which no longer exists, but we had an SSL-E and an SSL-J series, right? And when you needed to recall the freaking console, hell, good God. You know what I'm saying? Someone's taking photographs of a console and you're over there doing this and doing this and doing this and doing this and doing this on a freaking 32 channel console. Plus you're having to make sure you recall the entire back panel, which is all like the compressors and stuff. So you're like, you're in there for literally like maybe 45 minutes doing a recall because you're doing it once and then you're doing it one more time. It's just, that's what it was to me. And I said it's cool because it's fun, but it was not practical. But I still moved forward because I enjoyed the sounds that it made. I wasn't doing anything for clients or for business or for YouTube. There was no work coming from it. It was just fun. So I didn't mind doing those recalls. And that was kind of, I can't say it. Like when you said, what did it add to your creativity? It was like, I had been making albums with bands on labels since I was 18. So it was like, what like I creatively, I graduated from college, like man, like I already was there creatively. Well, yes, Eurorack brought something different. It was a supplement. It wasn't, say, the foundation. So it was kind of, I don't ever want people to think like, oh, I'm poo-pooing it. It's just like I'm a musician producer who creatively thought, even in my mind, I could get some of these sounds a different way. And so creatively, it made me enjoy evolving sounds more, long-term evolving things over time. But at the same time, the music I listen to and enjoy is very formulaic, right? It's very like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, whatever. So it's a little different,
Yeah. I should just point out at this juncture that Simon the Magpie is in the chat, and he's saying that he wants our contact details for his podcast. Check your Instagram, Simon. I'm pretty sure I sent mine. If not, I'll send it again, but I'm sure we'd both be delighted, mate. Hope you're doing all right in there.
What up, Simon?
So, yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because that's quite in contrast to my experience with it, in that, and that makes sense as well. It makes sense because it becomes, because I mean, all of our journeys are individual, and I remember speaking to other people who are already producing music to some degree or another, and Eurorack just becomes an interesting thing, dabble in and part of that. For me, I was just bored out of my mind on software, and I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't achieving anything, and it was kind of like the drudgery of the mouse and all these sorts of things. I mean, I've made albums in software. That's not a problem. It just was no longer getting me anywhere, and so Eurorack just came like a massive fresh bucket of water over my head, and like, oh yeah, right, this is fascinating. And so I was able to give it all of my attention. It's not as if I was just adding in a few bleeps or bloops or being interested in how things going on. I was hook, line and sinker into, this is what I want to spend my time doing. So, people have different experiences. I spoke to other people who use it purely for creating samples, creating loops. They create a loop in Eurorack and then use that in their software. It's just another way of approaching production. So
there's so many things I haven't thought about, like loops. Like it totally makes sense. But then, I just never. I guess I never thought of like that. I'm weird sometimes where you mentioned that, and I'm like, oh, I never would have thought to do that. Which is, I guess, the cool part.
Well, everyone has their way. See, that's the thing. There's no right way. I mean, there's a lot of talk about what the right way should be, and people come to some kind of
especially in the comment section.
But
you're wrong. Yes, of course.
But everyone finds what works for them, I think. Yeah. So creativity, you found it as another string to your bow, I suppose. Were there any real moments of awakening or any particular purchases that you thought, wow, that's really sorted that out?
I'm looking over here. I would, and everyone's going to think this is annoying, but okay. So I obviously got rid of the Mother 32s. I don't remember when that was, but it was probably, I can't remember, 2016 or something. So I only had the Mother 32s for like 2 years or something. And what I realized was, while the Mother 32s are great, they're also enormous in size for what they are. So I ran out of space in my A100 case, which was it was a 2U84. So 84 on 2 racks, 84 HP on 2 racks. And in reality, if I remember correctly, the Mother 32s themselves are like 60 HP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're sitting there thinking, I spent over like 70% of my Eurorack space on something that I'm not saying they're not functional. They're super functional, but they're only single voice sequencer. It's just, I got rid of one and I got the Sub 37 not something, SV1, sorry, the Pittsburgh Modular SV1. And at that time, the most inspirational change was getting the KB1, which is a keyboard module to go along with the SV1. So it's just like I couldn't get away from who I was.
Yeah.
Even though I know Eurorack is an entirely different format, and in a way, I'm sick of people saying just get a Keystep. The point of the Eurorack for me was always to have something that I could take with me, just like pick it up and go and make the type of music I like on the go. And the type of music I like sometimes requires some input from me as like, you know, a keyboardist or whatnot, right? So I want to play melodies. And in most of the videos I made when I did Eurorack, I played keys or something. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The KB1 and SV1 combination really made a big difference in making me like what I had built more, which obviously came with me buying a much larger case, which then turns into the case is empty. You have to buy more stuff, which then goes down the road towards me being very unhappy with what I had done. So, yeah.
Well, it's an exercise in dissatisfaction, isn't it? It's there.
Yes.
It's like any kind of fetish or any kind of drug, I suppose. It becomes, you know, it's just staring at you saying, we need more. We need more in here. There's things you're missing out on. You could be, you know, the noises you could be making. If only you had this bit. Yeah, we hear that call, I think. The keyboard angle is really interesting because I found that too, as much as when I plug in. I mean, I got a Keystep Pro over there somewhere, and a Keystep, but I use the Keystep a lot. The Keystep 37 is my favorite controller, I think, because it just has enough. It's just got the one CV out. You know, it has this arpeggiator, which I think is excellent because it has this pattern mode, which just generates a nice bass line. Whatever you do, just jam a couple of notes and it just plays nicely. And I can run that into any part of the Eurorack and off you go. And that what I mean, I found that the keyboard sort of it came back. It wanted to come back, and once I put that down, you're right. You can play a melody, and that's a simple, nice thing. Because otherwise, you're in a sense you're trying to create this music which is playing itself, but there's only so much that it can do. You want to do that bridge, that solo, that middle eight. You want to do something which puts in that pop sensibility somehow.
Yes. It can do all those things, but it can't interpret the melody you want to hear through, I guess, generation of notes and whatnot, right? Some people I hear do amazing like melodic things, but in a sense, melodic isn't a melody, right? Fine, it's playing things in the key of C. I know it's playing things in the key of C, but it's much more of a, you know, and maybe some people will be annoyed when I say this, but there is a human feel to thinking up a word, thinking up a melody note that word associates with, and then performing that word and melody note together or whatnot in a certain time, you know, along with harmony that makes it much more accessible to people, right? That's really what music is at its fundamental like base. But with Eurorack, you cannot do that. Someone saying I could do that with just modules. Yes, of course you could, but everything's a sequence. Some things need to be a little off time. Some things need to be a little before. And when you start getting into doing that much minutia, just open a damn piano roll on your computer and do those things. I don't think it's any more fun or you know, special in the Eurorack. You know, I couldn't find a way to do that just in Eurorack without a keyboard, and that became sort of the start of a disconnect after the recall thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I mean I was inspired by a couple of things. One was Annie and his
of course,
his little racks that just played themselves beautifully on a windowsill, you know. those were just brilliant, because that was somehow an exercise in non-action, in non-action. I don't know, where he just set the conditions and let it go, and that was fascinating. That was fascinated me. But I was also very inspired by How to Destroy Angels, Trent Reznor and what's it, Thingy Bob. I can never remember, because they were using modular, chunky modular, but it was also very melodic, very song structured, and of course with vocals as well. And it was sort of finding myself thinking I could achieve what Annie was doing, but aspired somehow to be able to write songs. How do you write songs on Eurorack? And that's where I am currently. I think I'm churning through the ideas, and I'm chipping away at my rack with the idea of how do I write a song which contains the elements that we normally expect to some degree. I mean, at some point I'm going to sing. It's going to happen. I don't quite know when that is, but because in my heart I'm an indie singer songwriter. I'm an Ed Sheeran wannabe from 20 years before he was born. But how you translate that into Eurorack is a real tough one. It's a it's almost counterintuitive. It's almost a barrier to it. And if I keep talking like this, I'll talk myself out of it into a regular synthesizer, which makes far more sense in this.
Yes. It'd be like, here's my thought. It's to me, and I think of this, right? There are people who will come to my, and this happened for many years, maybe less now because I haven't made a Eurorack video like that's demonstrating Eurorack in like 3 years. But like, people would come and they'd say things like, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness you're making like actual music instead of bleeps and bloops with the Eurorack." And my thought was this: I'm only making this type of music because that's who I am, not because I don't like bleeps or bloops or whatever they're, because them saying bleeps and bloops is clearly a way of disparaging or discounting what that type of music is. And I always say, like, that's the beauty in Eurorack, right? It isn't just a 61 note keyboard that does 61 note keyboard things. A Eurorack can be what I made. A Eurorack can be something where I bought a keyboard in the Eurorack so I could play the Eurorack. Something where I can include, I bought a little Bifaco like input module that does like mic, line, and instrument, right? Because I said, oh, and it sounds amazing. I love this module because I'm like, well, I have a bunch of effects. I'd love to play my guitar through my Eurorack. It is what you want it to be. And for all of the people, I think that was a big issue for certain people when I noticed them come and talk to me about or say things like, well, if you just did this. And I'm like, this is music, bro. Like, you're telling another artist how they should make music. It's asinine to do that to anyone. It's like it's literally saying to Adele, dude, if only you could make music like Steve Aoki. Like, if you just got on like a Roland TRA 808, Adele, if you only did, you don't know the possibilities of the world. That's not who she is. Steve Aoki doesn't need to sing ballads. I like what he does on his own. And I think that's, I don't know where that kind of came up in that there's a battle between, and maybe people just want to hear what they want to hear. I like people to be who they are. And that's the beauty in modular. I think it is whatever you want it to be. And if what you want isn't what someone else wants, it doesn't discount it or make it worse. You and I may be similar, but like you said, you're Ed Sheeran in the way of like you're a singer songwriter, right? Well, like I'm sure Ed Sheeran could play his guitar and get to a song a lot quicker than say opening the VST guitar synth in whatever. And you know what I'm saying? It's just
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that, I think perhaps what we have now, what is emerging more recently, is a much broader church of what Eurorack is about. Because when we started, it was engineers and scientists who were twiddling away with these things, telling us that we needed a maths, telling us that we needed a clouds because they were the most creative possibilities out there. And that's what you needed. You must do it this way, and you must understand
Mhm.
voltage, you must understand power supplies. All of that was going on 5-6 years ago when
Yeah.
we were starting out. These days, you have fantastic musicians like somebody just mentioned Red Means Recording, Jeremy
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in the chat, and he's doing incredibly musical things, very song-based things.
Hmm.
I'm always stunned whenever I look at his videos. For instance, he did a review of I did the mod bap Osiris, and
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just before I made my video, I made the mistake of watching his and going, "Oh God, darn, I'll never be able to do anything that's as musical as that." God, geez.
Yeah.
So he has, because he's an extraordinary musician, he's able
Mhm.
to bring that musicianship to Eurorack, and because he's come to it late, relatively, he's not
Mhm.
being bombarded by the proper way of doing things like perhaps we
Yes.
were, and so he's much
Thank
freer,
you.
I think, in
It
that, and that's a
it
great
is.
thing.
He's such a product of, because I remember, even you can remember. I remember Jeremy was like, "Stop! I'm not gonna do Eurorack. Like, don't
Yes.
talk to me about doing Eurorack. I'm not doing Eurorack. This. I'm not saying he said it was stupid. He's just like, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not what I'm doing." And then now he's got a whole, basically, I mean, I'm not saying his whole channel of Red Means Recording ambience dedicated to Eurorack, but the way in which he's stepped into the world of Eurorack at
Mm.
this juncture, I think maybe when he started in like 20, did he start like Eurorack in like 2019, 2020 or
Yeah, very
something?
very recently.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, where it's like us, someone saying like the herb verb is the best of 5 modules that do what herb verb does. Whereas now it's like there's probably 50 modules that do something kind of like herb verb, but then also with different twists that can really fit who you are. Like I remember when what's that module from Endorphins? Is it like the launch pad from Endorphins? Is that the one?
Ground control.
Ground control launch pad. The ground control from
Nearly. Yeah.
Endorphins. I I that module, could you imagine that module in 2014?
Mm.
Oh my god. That module is just like a light years ahead of what it can do, like 4-channel sequencing, a keyboard built in, uh, all these things, right? It did not exist at the time when I started, and I was a product of maybe some jaded, possibly jaded about. Well, I did the best I could at the time, kind of. This is what there was. I tried. 5 years later, everybody makes a Eurorack module at this point, right? So even
Yes.
companies had made Eurorack and left. Dave Smith made Eurorack modules. No one remembers this, but Dave Smith Instruments made Eurorack modules. They don't do it anymore. So, you know, time has passed.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Another comment from Simon was about the tactile, playful nature of Eurorack, which is
Mhm.
definitely a factor for me moving from software. Not that my world was necessarily software. I do understand hardware exists and have played with it, but
Mhm.
the uniqueness of not just having knobs to play with, because you have that on synthesizers, but having to patch, having to feel your way around things, and so often twisting
Mhm.
something which is the wrong thing, and then refinding
Yes.
that in of itself is always going to be a pro. I think it's going to be a reason for enjoying it, if that's the sort of thing one enjoys.
Yeah, you can really
Oh, I've got something
have a
up my nose.
time sink doing um Eurorack. I a big and like you kind of mentioned the whole software computer thing, right? I started in Reason, and Reason was a big influence for me in doing music. And all I had was like Reason and a keyboard controller. And I made some of the best stuff ever in Reason and a keyboard controller.
Mm.
But my job sort of became one where when I got into media and video editing, where I stopped working in a physical studio where I'm in a studio. There's really one computer and you're not really always looking at it. There's musicians in the live room. You also have a big SSL board. You have a bunch of like hardware stuff behind you. And probably the computer you're looking at the most in the world of at least mine, which was an SSL E series, you're looking sort of at like the center console and you're doing stuff on a green screen from like 1980, right? That's the center console of an SSL. So it's not super big into like staring at a blue, you know, monitor, right? It's not as much about that, right? Because there's a lot of interaction. So the big move for me to disliking software as much and looking at a computer was working in video and doing media stuff. And when I bought the Prophet 6 was the first like keyboard I had owned that had like no screen. It's got just like three little LEDs. I'm looking over here at the OV6, but I love that. And that's sort of the same thing that modular kind of does. It says you can make cool music with no screens, and it puts you back in the place of like turning a knob to do a change that can change a lot of things instead of pushing a mouse up on a button, making sure you click it. And that can be it's a different way of people working. I don't even really use VST soft synths or whatever anymore. But I mean, I guess I'm also fortunate to own too many keyboards at this point. So,
well, it's a different drain, isn't it? I suppose. I mean, one thing.
Yes.
One thing that threw some light on a subject to me recently was I was recently asked to actually write some music for something, which doesn't happen very often. And I thought, great, fantastic, time to wield this Eurorack into an awesome. He was after 12 minutes of sort of ambient music. Thought, perfect, right, I'm into this. And I thought about it. I went, sod it, I'm going to go open up Studio One, load up some virtual instruments, because the first thing is that I can pull off a 12-minute ambient piece on Eurorack, no problem. But if it isn't what he's after, the client isn't really after, then I can't go back and adjust it because I would have unplugged it and done something else by then. So if I'm honestly going to work on something for a client, to which I'm allowing feedback, is this right? Do you want it in a different key? Do you want it faster, small? That kind of thing. Then working on a computer with virtual instruments or with MIDI instruments, it's the same deal really, with patch memories. All of that makes so much more sense than fiddling around on my Eurorack. So I can completely, and that was the first time I really had that, realization, because I was faced with having to accomplish something. It wasn't, it was no longer just a train of thought. It was, how am I going to do this?
And and that is the exact reason that I sort of made the video about Eurorack and how I had to sort of stop using it. Was like in 2014 and 2015, 2016, when I'm making Eurorack stuff and I'm making music, it's just for myself and it's purely for fun. I have, no wife or kids. Oh, this is great. Like, I just spent 5 hours doing something that I'll never be able to replicate again. While I don't think that's a waste of time, as I moved into, as literally once I did that Eurorack for Beginner series or whatever, and that was like 2017, 2018, whatever, I don't remember. Literally, like, things just started to change, like, as like a musician or a professional content creator or something. Almost everything I did, and this is, in a way, maybe I want to point out the bad of doing something for, it becomes something that you do for money, is that you now have expectations, you now have deadlines, you now have people expecting something to be a certain way and not your way all the time. Yeah. Sometimes, and most often when it's their money, it's their way. So I can't sit there and say, I want to spend 5 hours doing something that all they have to say is, could you just turn that down a little bit? And I say, you do that. Whereas like you said, if you have a bunch of studio instruments, you're like, oh yeah, for sure. Of course. Like, yeah, like no problem. It's all saved. Everything's recallable. Everything's automatable in different things. It's tempo synced. It's transposable.
Yes.
I just ended up noticing that I loved Eurorack, but my life didn't love the approach that would have been needed to take to do the things in my life professionally or just even for fun, to just stay on the path of saying, like, I'm just going to do like Eurorack, like irregardless, I'm doing this. I told people that I like Eurorack, so I'm just doing this. It was really unfortunate like understanding of that, like, and like I said, it had become a glorified like background piece of, you know, I would
It's
literally
art.
I'd
It
use my
is.
Eurorack more. I'd pick it up and move it over to like the set of where I shoot, and I put it
Yes.
down and I plug it in, and I'd say, well, $6,000 well spent. That was it. And like I stopped doing videos about it because like I don't like the idea of like the my YouTube channel is honestly a reflection of my life. You know, I don't do videos all the time, sometimes not for 5 or 6 months at a time. And just sitting here telling people like, because honestly, the whole time companies would come to me over those like 3 years that I didn't really use it, and they'd say, hey, can we send you this Eurorack module? And I'd
Mm.
straight up say to the company, like, I'm not really doing like Eurorack right now. Like maybe at some point in the future, but just like I just I can't really like make a video about a module. Like like I already am not doing it. So now you want to like give me something to do something that I don't do naturally. It's not gonna be the right thing. And yeah, I I need to be able to open sessions and transpose things. I need to open up sessions and do that 5 dB change
Yeah.
2 months later when a client is asking a person who's reviewing the thing what they want to see, and it's as simple as that. It's I don't know if it's not that serious, but I'm just saying that's literally my life at this point.
Mm.
So
Well, it's a real thing.
yeah,
Is the point really? You know, it's not as if it's a hobby for you. I mean, you know, you're doing music for real. Like, I mean,
yeah, I
there's
like
a lot of us who are just messing about, but you know, if you're actually doing it for real, then you have to take real decisions and make real choices that support that.
that sounds. I you know it's funny, as like sad or as like real as this is gonna sound, or as somber as this is gonna sound. Um, I like I love music and I love to make music, but kind of like when I worked in a studio um, professionally, this is years ago, I realized that like I didn't, as I did that more and more, not just purely for the fun, but like also I need to eat, right? It stopped being the same passion. The passion was still there, but it had changed to something different.
Mm.
Whereas before anything, I remember like when I was in high school, right? I'm like waking up on a Saturday at like 9 a.m. and I'm like making music from like 9 a.m. to like 11 at night. And I'm just staying in my room all day. It's all I wanted to do. My friends are like, hey, why don't they come over? We'd make music, we'd have fun, we're laughing. And now all those friends have a kid and they're whatever. And now it's just my ass. And it's also my ass doing emails to clients and budget stupid things and them saying, can you do this for this deadline, and lowballing your ass. And then some company um, trying to get you to like hawk some bull crap that you don't want to do. And you can't avoid it because you're out there in the public, just like you are.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
get so many emails about things that you're like, really? And then they're like, and then on top of that, they're also saying, can you do it for like nothing? And you're just like, what? Come on now. So it's different. It evolves. And sometimes I wish I could go back to just me and my friends just making
Yeah.
music for hours and it means nothing. And you lose that hard drive and nobody cares. But
It
yeah,
probably means living in your mum's basement, though, doesn't it? I mean, that's the that's the
yeah.
that's the
And yeah,
transaction.
for everyone who wants to be successful, I feel like this. You either want to be hella successful, like you want to be like Kanye West, or you want to be not successful at all. Because in the middle, you're just a normal person who's enjoying what they do, but also you have to keep doing it
Mm.
to just, it's like YouTube.
Yes.
YouTube does not like me because I don't like YouTube. I don't like to make a video every week on a certain day, even if like I know that that's good for me. It's just, I'm not, weirdly to say, I'm not inspired that much. I make a lot of music offline and for clients behind the scenes, but like saying I'm going to go down the road of making an uploaded video with some thumbnail that's going to get attention on this day regularly, it starts to become not as much a passion
Yeah.
and more of a regimented thing, which I don't go to church, so sometimes you know I can't be that religious about doing things, so it's kind of hard in reality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something which I think all content creators. Oh, I got. I read something the other day that content creator is the opposite of artist, which is a bit sad. I hate it when these things get all muddled up and criticized, and you start wondering what on earth words you're supposed to be using. But anyone making
Well,
videos
well,
on
wait.
these, what?
What do you think? Because in your life right now, how do you feel about that sort of classification?
Mm.
A content creator is not an artist.
Yes. Well, I feel that that's a mischaracterization of the meaning of the words, and I think an unnecessary muddying and attempt at exclusivism. Where you're trying to make some a group of people feel less worthy or less
Mm.
special, perhaps because of the words they're trying to use in order to describe themselves. Which describing yourself is difficult. I mean, people ask me, what is it that I do? You know, to my to my kids mates, I'm a YouTuber. I'm flipping famous YouTuber. He is his dad, right? He's on YouTube. So, but am I that? Well, I don't know, to a degree, because that's what I
Hmm.
that's what I enjoy doing, perhaps. But
Hmm.
or am I a writer? And is that creating content? I'm creating content for websites, or am I a journalist writing for websites? All of these terms are so loaded that it becomes difficult to know which one to describe you by without feeling conceited or feeling that you are putting forward some grandeur about my status. Do you know what I mean? Do you get the sense that I'm
Hmm.
troubled by all these things?
I mean, I feel consistently conflicted with the whole. You know how people have said for years, it may be less and less now because people realize how much money is in the world of content creation or YouTube or
Mm,
being a creator or whatnot, right? I think for years before people understood and before being a YouTuber became the most, like in America and like the UK or something, like being a YouTuber is like the most sought after like profession now before like all these other things, right? Where um I personally obviously have to do a bunch of creative things, artistic things in the path to creating a final piece of work. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Um, but there are trade offs to those types of being a content creator that absolutely do not enhance the creative process around it, right? One of the
mm.
things I hate the most about YouTube is making thumbnails, but I also get the game. I get the game. I spend so much more time on thumbnails than I rightfully should, and maybe that's why I haven't made a YouTube video in like 3 or 4 months now. I don't know. Maybe who knows? Um, but I'm just saying, I look at the world of YouTube as the perfect hybridization of a business, if someone wants to make it a business, and an art form,
Mm,
because you, I mean, and maybe even this, right? The companies that often talk to us and want us to do things, those are the companies where it's almost fully a business once it reaches us, right? It's they have a product to sell and they need a way to let people know that their product exists, right?
yeah,
Nobody reads magazines anymore. Nobody really reads forum stuff anymore. Everyone just goes to YouTube to watch whatever it is they want to watch. You know what I'm saying? Um, I know that you write for like Sound on Sound, right? That's one
mm,
of the few magazines that people even still respect or go to as like a piece of old type of media, right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
things in there are so well done still to this day. Whereas when people like myself look back at things like electronic music magazine from back in the day, it's like, dang, this thing was like this thing was 75 pages, but it was like 44 pages of ads,
yeah, yeah,
and you're just like, what was this? Right. So I, I I don't know where people start to be like content creators, not art. I mean, it's a mother freaking magazine that all it did was it sold space to companies to, it literally, I don't know what people want from like something where you have to kind of curate ideas. I mean, is art on the street like painting a picture and then hoping for tips? I don't know how you
I don't know
categorize things.
how far down you have to go. I think people also want to own a part of the conversation, and I think the way to do that is to say quite extraordinary things or make a decision or a proclamation of something is in or is out. And I think there's a desire to control the conversation somehow.
Well, I definitely know that I'm not making enough money purely off YouTube to live. So for every person that says it's not, let's just say if I only did YouTube, which also if you're only doing YouTube, I should probably make more than like 2 videos every 6 months. But I'm just saying, irregardless, if that was really what I did as an artist, yeah, I mean, I think that, all transparency, last month on YouTube, I made $197 or something, right? Now, fine, I'm not poo-pooing $97. I'm just saying, is that not close enough to starving artists? Like what the like what do people really want? Like I don't even know.
No. Well, I mean, I couldn't be doing it if I wasn't writing. It's the writing that finances everything. It's that actually makes any money. YouTube sadly does not. I mean, as you say, there's a few dollars knocking around. A couple of $100 comes in, which is not bad. It buys me another shirt. It might replace my microphone in a couple of months. It keeps things ticking over. And in some ways, it's just enough to make you think, oh yeah, I should keep doing it. I should keep doing it. Then you add a little bit of Patreon to that and it bumps it a little bit and you go, oh, it's just enough that I now feel obligated to keep doing it. And that can be useful. It's a useful incentive that pushes me along, but at the same time, if I only did this, it just would fall apart really quickly.
Unfortunately, you and I both know that the possibility for doing YouTube, being a musician on YouTube full time, is one of the hardest decisions, because what you realize is like, it's really not what people think it is when you say, I'm going full time on YouTube. It's like, it's literally like, I'm going full time on YouTube. My wife hates me and we're broke, but I love to do this every day. And like, this is so much more valuable when I only live once than doing something I don't like just because I'm making twice as much. It's not this utopian place where companies are just showering you with like free stuff without obligations, and you're rich, ready to like retire. Like eventually there's no safety, there's no retirement, there's no free lunch. So so everyone out there who wants to be a full-time musician on YouTube doing it,
I mean,
you can take my spot.
There is a factor that when you work in music in full time, it changes your relationship to it. So when people are talking about Eurorack as a hobby, it has everything that you could possibly want in terms of being a hobby. It has that desire to build something. It has the creativity in it. It has that way that it's going to enhance your ability to make music, which is your hobby. It has a sciencey bit to it. It has potentially electronics and soldering and DIY. It has those elements as well, and a a journey that goes on potentially forever. You have woodworking skills you can stick in there. You've got communities that go around it. And there's even that faint glimmer that one day I'm going to be a professional recording artist. It's an enormously tempting and enticing hobby when it's a hobby. When it becomes part of your working life, a lot of those things have to fade away because you have to get a job done, you have to get things done, and that slight overload you get from having to work with it every day, that lessens its joy that you have on playing with it as a hobby, as an alternative to work. if that makes sense.
Yes, it's like you said, it's the alternative, because you don't gain more hours just because you get to do something for fun, right? You still have to make some amount of money. Like, you know, uh, like I said, making making $200 a month on YouTube, or $2,400 a year, right? Is what I'm saying. Like, if that's really what it was, like, while I'm not saying that that should be poo-pooed, because while it is something I do for fun, it is always, like you said, it is the part of work that you're giving up, right? And I always say this: the only reason why my niche, or whatever, the thing I do on YouTube, is safe, is because, and this is not to pat myself on the back, I'm just saying, as a true pragmatic thing, nobody is going to do what I do on YouTube for $200 a month. It just won't happen. The amount of time the people that I have to spend, that I enjoy, right? I don't do Halloween specials because I know it's going to make money. I know it's going to cost me a bunch of money, but I love to do it. And nobody's going to come along and be like, oh, hey, it costs this much, and I have to spend this much time. Oh, and I make no money, really. I'm down $500 because I bought the synthesizer in the video. Oh, my family would love that. It just doesn't work. And so I feel safe that I always have a love for the thing I do, even if I don't do it very much. I continue to work to just be myself. Somebody said they're like, I hope that you do 12 1-minute synthesizer reviews this year. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I'd love that. That'd be great too. Like, I've never done that, but that would be pretty cool. So
I think you go over time, though. I think I might have noticed that there's a little bit of misleadingness in your 5-minute synthesizer reviews.
If one more person, Robin.
Okay, I am sorry. That's a terrible observation. I'm sure that no one would have ever pointed that out. How rude of someone to have pointed that out.
The first minute you pay for, the next 14 minutes are free. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
You pay for the first 15 seconds in ads, and then the rest it's free, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. People are still talking about the maths in the chat. It's ubiquitous. Oh,
I'm sorry. Like, I should have never brought up the precious maths module. I mean, here's the thing. I would much rather have a ton of other modules from Make Noise that aren't the maths. And does that make me better? Pressure points, I would never get rid of pressure points and brains, ever. I love pressure points and brains. I'm trying to look over here to...
Good. I mean, because this is a point perhaps worth saying, is that you haven't actually removed Eurorack from your world. There's still some that hangs out. So what is it that still hangs out in your place, or is it just for adornment?
No, I actually I had made a very conscious effort to figure out what I wanted to do in Eurorack, and then I found it. But the problem is there are so many options now. You don't really know what modules exist. I had never owned a module from this company called Instruo.
Yes.
They make
they make beautiful things in Scotland.
Beautiful modules. I had never really understood what they did or why I should have it. But something I had been missing in Eurorack that was very important was I wanted an analog polyphonic sound texture in my Eurorack. And I bought this psych module or something.
Yes.
And being able to have chromatic 4-voice harmony with the ability to change inversions and do things like that in a module that's it's 12 HP, that is truly a powerful. Like, if I could start a system all over again built around that module, I would 100% do it. Aside from that, the only modules that are just like forever modules, it's like the Strymon modules, the Magneto and the Starlab. Probably still more Magneto. I just love Magneto more maybe than Starlab.
See, Magneto is on my list of modules I struggle with. or modules I don't understand. I've have this forever plan of a series of videos on, modules that I struggle with. Not that I hate, just that I just do not understand. And Magneto is number one on that.
It's number one? I mean...
Yeah. I can't get rid of it because I know in there is something awesome. And every now and again I tease it out. But most of the time I'm just going, oh my God.
This is kind of a funny thing. I actually got like a what is it called? Like a job producing a record off of just a video I made with the maths module. The artist who was like, I don't know, they saw that one video, and I had used the shift mode in the module. I'm looking at it. Yes. I haven't really used it a lot. And it's a cool ass video. I made this thing and they loved that sound. They're like, we want you to produce our record because we love your sound, like what you do with things. And I was just like, I just clicked the thing down to shift and I did the thing I would always do. But, it is a very powerful, cool module, but it's also, I also really just kind of I moved away from having a bunch of effects modules, and all I have are Starlab and Magneto now.
Interesting.
So yeah, I would say realistically, I love it. I love my Eurorack now because of the Instruo giving me what I really wanted is harmony, and I'm a keyboardist, so 4 voices, polyphony in something small is super important. And you can use this mode. I forgot what the mode is called, but in the module, you can do literally like, you can go up and down like any key. And yeah, I love that. I love that module. So I'm not away from Eurorack. I don't hate Eurorack. It's just, it still doesn't make sense when someone says, hey, could you make some music for us? It's like, it's the same thing of Ed Sheeran reaching for a physical guitar where he's going to just hit it like and go, right? Which is me with the keyboard, or sit down, open the guitar VST plugin, open piano roll, start doing like things. It's just like, if you're wanting to make music, why wouldn't you do it with the thing that is the most familiar and inspirational to you? And that to me is and that's what irks me, is that people, instead of doing the thing that's the most effective and creative for making something, just do it a different way because I say so. And it's just like, I would never tell someone who plays guitar, well, why don't you just play piano to like make music? It's just like, well, why? Like, why?
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, and for people out there who are weeping at the idea of spending all this money on the wrong thing, again, listen to what Stephen's saying. I mean, my experience is very, very different. It has to be for what you are about. It has to be where your creativity comes from. I mean, I've never been more productive than I have since getting into Eurorack. Well, maybe as a kid with a guitar and a 4-track. Mate, those were the days when anything was possible. But as an adult with children, with a family and a job, being able to sit down with something. I mean, if anybody saw my Stochastic Instruments live stream we did last week with the guys from Stochastic, we sat down and music started, during the course of that live stream, talking about the Stochastic Inspiration Generator, that module, it just started creating music as we were fiddling with it. And it was such a joyful experience, and discovering things about it, going, oh, wow, that just sounds brilliant. And look, oh, wow, it's doing that. And that's the sort of the thing about Eurorack that really speaks to me somehow, is the joy of discovery, the potential of music that's always there, that I just have to tease it out a little bit. And more often than not, I'm finding it sounds lovely to me, to my ears. So, it has to be about what gives you joy, what gives you, that zing ultimately. So what synths are you into then? Tell us about that.
Now, I mean, I just got the OB6. I got my favorite like polyphonic synthesizer ever right now. I just got the OB6, even though the Prophet 6 is still over here under its wonderful dust cover. Yeah, I still will. I love the OB6. It's so much more show stopping than the Prophet 6, but I don't own the OB6. I just have the OB6 right now. I'm still really inspired by the Subharmonicon. I think the Subharmonicon is Moog's best synthesizer since, probably to me, since the Sub 37. And the Sub 37 was only a really amazing thing to me because it has the it had the better tuning for when you're playing live. Also,
is that
forgive me if you hear gardeners in the background.
Yeah. Is the Sub 37?
The Sub 37 is behind me.
Yeah.
Yes, my trusty old 2014 Sub 37 with I have one of the ones with the bad filter pots, which, like, I don't know. They've asked me before. They're like, "Hey, you just send it in. We'll like switch it out for you." And I'm just like, "But this one holds like sentimental value. I don't really want a new." It has yellowing keys at this point. You can't tell, but keys are definitely yellow at this point after playing outside and things like that for a long time. But yeah, I'm trying to think what. Ooh, you know what I do really like? This Polygon Tracker back here. It's underneath. It's in its case. That Polygon Tracker, really something special with that. I would say that's the number one most, like, you know, and a long time ago, they asked to send me one, and I was like, no, I don't really want one because I don't know what it is, or I don't know. I don't want to do videos about it. But when I got it finally, now I'm like, wow, that is something. That's special. That's a special thing.
So where do you normally sequence? No, I don't. Where do you normally sequence?
In the computer, in like Cubase. Yeah. I probably will play most things live. The only things I don't really play live are like Rode stuff anymore. I used to use the SV1's internal sounds, but I sequence everything in Cubase. The only thing I used to use for hardware sequencing outside was I used to use the Tempest, because the Tempest has a pretty cool sequencer in it. But I really don't use any hardware sequencing anymore. So
how does the tracker fit into that?
It's like my new, like I call it like my just for fun. Like I'm not really making any like long-term music, but I also can save stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
I kind of use it like I use my what's this? My Yamaha CP thing. Like sometimes I'll literally just pick up the Yamaha CP, turn it on, and I'll just play stuff. You know, if I'm sitting here doing stuff, I'll have it sit next to me, and I'll just like play it while it's like, you know, just for fun. So same thing with the tracker. It's like when I want to make music that's different, that's like electronic type stuff, I just put the Polygon Tracker in my lap. I have a little battery in that case, like a little portable battery, and I just kind of just like have fun with it, just like, you know. And it's a different way of kind of making music that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Even though
you're using
they did a good job with that.
Using like the internal sounds, using it like a groove box, I suppose, to some degree.
Yeah. I don't have any groove boxes really, except for the Tempest, and the Tempest doesn't really make sounds like the tracker. So, and also the Tempest can't run off a battery. So that's why the tracker really is cool, because it can run off a little battery. And so it's kind of self-contained. I have everything in one box. I'll take it with me if I'm going to my mom's house or going camping. It's perfect for that. And it has a screen, but the screen's not annoying. So
yeah, no, that's really interesting. No, I've never tried one. It's oh man, I talked to the guys from NerdSeek on I think it was on a Bafako modular day or something in a live stream, and they're of course talking about the NerdSeek, and I'm just going, oh, trackers, man, it's like a whole other part of my past that I somehow avoided. Like it's like you're supposed to have been into trackers when you were a kid, and I never quite managed it, and so there's an element about it that just leaves me cold. but it's only because I've never gotten beneath,
Hmm.
never gotten under the skin of that kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure what it is to expect, perhaps. Have you never been into Electron? Have they never tempted you with boxes that go bing?
Electron, like the Digitact,
Yeah,
right? That's what they make.
that's it. Yeah.
um, well, so I borrowed. So you probably don't remember this, but I had been very like big on that. Like Electron was sort of a bit too far of a bridge, or bridge too far, because of the things that they kind of, it just seemed like a lot to learn for their actual product, right? It just, for what I was going to get from it, it's like, dude, I already have this, I'll just use that. Like the biggest video I swear people constantly ask about is like, can you just do Electron rhythm versus the Dave Smith Instruments Tempest? And I'm like this, no, I don't want to learn an analog rhythm just because you want to hear an analog rhythm versus a Tempest, because at the end of the day, just pick one, and you'll eventually make the type of music you want to make, right? Like you'll make it do what you want to do, because they can both do kind of similar things. I do have, since I don't want people to think I'm that much of a terrible hater of Electron, because I'm not. I tried them and I sent them back. I do own an analog heat from Electron, and this is amazing. I love the analog heat. It's like a plugin that's always in my DAW, like it's always on my master channel, and just in case. So yes, I love Electron, but I don't want to say this is the only thing I love for Electron. I'm just saying I've only tried the Digitac, the Digitone, and this I bought for myself. Nobody gave it to me, and it's that good. So I don't know.
That's good. That's a good.
Do you have some
recommendation.
Electron stuff?
No, I've not. It
Okay.
doesn't. Again, it doesn't. It's not something that inspires me particularly either. It feels very. Well, of course, I'm going to say German, aren't I? Because I'm British, but it feels very ordered, and it feels like I don't know. I don't. There's nothing about the interface that makes me go, "Oh, wow, this is going to be great." It makes me go, "Oh, I've got a headache. I'm not quite sure what am I going to." Oh. So yeah, no, it doesn't fill me with joy. But again, it all depends on your approach. I mean, interestingly, I've got something a bit similar. I'm reviewing for Sound on Sound at the moment. It's not a secret. This one, what's it called? Aliven XFM. It's by Sonic.
Oh yeah.
And it's a weird box where I'm just going, what on earth is this? That's the fella. And I'm thinking, wow. Yes. I mean, it's not like saying this is going to be really easy. It's sitting on my desk looking at me going, this is going to be really hard, and you've got to try to get underneath it and share thoughts on it. And it's like, ooh.
I love. So this I don't want to say this is going to be a controversial thing to say.
Ooh.
But I loved the 8-bit warps from XFM, right? From Liven. Sorry, the XFM is that one. The 8-bit warps from Liven was, and still is, probably something I use way more than I should, because I don't really make music like that, but it's so much fun, and I like that way of working. The XFM has been a bit of a challenge, and I don't know why, because I know how the 8-bit warps works, and maybe it's because it's an FM type of a thing, and the FM, in the way of they try to make it work, it's just a bit off. But yeah, I've had it for a while, and I've really said I need to figure out the value in it over, say, just somebody using the the Volca FM or something. This has way more voices. Technically, to me, it's way better. But also the FM in the Volca FM is so accessible that it's like, for me, when I think of how good something is, I only really gauge it from how much fun did I have, and does that thing make me want to use it again very quickly, you know? And the 8-bit warps, yes, the Live and XFM, struggle with that.
Hmm.
So
Well, I've only sort of turned it on and had a play so far, so I've got to dedicate some days to it later in the week or next week, I think, in order to get under its skin. But also, first of all, I must apologise to the whole of Sweden, of course, and probably the whole of Germany. But
well,
as I said,
Sweden and Germany.
I'm British, so I don't. I mean, I don't even know where those places are. So, because Electron, of course, is Swedish, not German. I wish I knew that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We do try,
Oh,
but
you're right. That's true. Whoops.
yeah. But since we pulled up the drawbridge, it's just the wildlands out in over the sea. That's all we know.
Sweden has so many cool companies. There's so many companies in Sweden. Like I had no idea how much stuff I buy that's like from Sweden.
Yeah.
Like they have some kind of like amazing system of like inspiring people to like start creative businesses and then
Mm.
sell their wares across the world. They must have something. So I mean, Simon has pedals now, Magpie pedals. So
I know that's crazy talk.
the Swedes have. We're gonna get Bo Beats Eurorack next week, maybe. Who knows?
Are we?
At this
Well, one can
at
never
this
be
rate,
sure what might happen. I mean, I think Super Booth this year is going to be fascinating because we've all been hatching plans over the last couple of years as to because all the terrible supply of components and delivery changes. Talking nonsense now. The problem with all of that has kept everything quite low the last couple of years, and so I think we're going to see a lot of new stuff coming up this May at Super Booth. It's going to be interesting.
Are you going?
It's an argument I have with myself every time. I'd like to very much. The problem is that I make a load of money around Super Booth because I write about it, but I can't write about it if I'm there. So I have to make the choice of because I know that Gaz, for instance, wants to go and take us a bunch of us over to have a complete bender for a whole week. Be completely off our face, synthesizers and beer and Berlin. Sounds fantastic, but I know that I'll lose lots and lots of money by not writing about it for websites and bits and pieces. So I have to make a judgment. So the best way I've done it is I go on the Saturday just for a day. And although that's exhausting, it is sort of done in a day, and I have fun, and I talk to people, and I can take a kid or two with me, and it's a good thing, and I don't feel I have to feel awkward at some party later on when I'm feeling too old and want to go to bed. So swings and roundabouts. So I'll go for at least a day. I think that fortunately the work is too valuable, but that's the plan.
Yeah, I'm undecided. I'm coming from so far to go, which makes it sort of a bit of a, because when we went to at Synth Reactor, right? It's like I was dead for like 2 days straight because of the jet lag going to Germany. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to be like doing that again. Like that could be interesting. Now, if it were like Tommen where they're going to pay, right? All expenses. Yeah, let's go. Let's have a great time. But like, I mean, I might go just to see people. That might be the only thing, it's been so long since there's been a NAMM, really, there's been a couple of years. So I don't see anyone. And I might get convinced. I don't know. It depends on plane prices, ticket prices, and restrictions. So
I know. I mean, that was the problem with the one just gone in September, October time. Is that I almost felt like I could go. The only problem was that if I got a positive result while I was out there, which was something you probably had to do, I would be stuck in Berlin for 2 weeks, and that would not work. That would just not work. So, it just felt like, even though the risk wasn't high, it was high enough just to think, no, let's just not do it. So,
I want to see people, but yeah, I think if I lived in, Europe, I would definitely 100% go. Yeah. It's just really California to, Germany with everything, and you have to to come back into the States, you have to have all that stuff. So it's just could be a 2 weeks that I'm having to pay for being somewhere extra can become, you know.
So what you want?
When you're making $100 on YouTube, it can't
you
work.
want Dave Smith to say, "Oi, why don't you come with me on our sequential 2 week long bender over in Berlin?" And
what company would actually
you'll be the man.
Pull me along? I don't know. Probably none. They've forgotten that I even exist after not making videos for so long. But
I don't know. I mean, you have popped up on sequential lately. So, I mean, tell me, coming back to the synths for a moment, the OB6 and the Prophet 6. I mean, there's also the Rev 2 in that mix as well. I've never played on any of them. How does one choose between those ones? What is the pros and cons?
Okay, so my description, since I guess I've played almost every Dave Smith synth, and actually in a weird way, that's the company like I'm the closest to, just because I know the most people from that company. I'm in California, so I went to like the Prophet X launch and all this stuff. The Prophet 6 is to me the best Dave Smith or sequential synthesizer that they've made, for all of the reasons of sound quality, build quality, some people call it like pose factor, the beauty of the thing itself, and also its sort of integration and what you get for it. Like, I like the effects in the Prophet 6 regardless. And it really fits. It doesn't always blow you away with the first sound, but it just fits in songs and stuff like that. The OB6 is like the most jaw-dropping like synthesizer. I think it's the most jaw-dropping new analog synthesizer that has been made, and that means it's better than I have the Polybrute or whatever is back here.
Yeah.
It's just more explosive than like the Polybrute. It's more explosive than like say the what Behringer, the Deep Mind 12. I'm just saying, like, just you hit some patch and you're like, wow, like you just say wow. And the Rev 2 is like it's really good. It's hard because like I know the difference between, say, the Rev 2s and when they switched over to sequential, like when they went from Dave Smith to sequential. It's just I just have to say things like it's really good because it is, and you can get 16 voices for such a good price, but it's not the same. Like, it's not even the same architecture of synthesizer as the OB6 or Prophet 6. So it's just different. But I think Dave Smith or sequential. I'm really interested to see what happens now that they're aligned with Focusrite. That is very interesting. I haven't really talked to them since they've, kind of become part of that conglomerate in a way. So I'm interested in what that means for them. Hopefully it means good things. Hopefully it means cheaper things. My only criticism of Dave Smith instruments or sequential has been that I think that they're not serving the entire market that would like their pieces of equipment. They don't have any synthesizer that is purely there. So that means I'm not counting any Pioneer, Torias crossovers. The cheapest synthesizer that Dave Smith or sequential makes right now is the Take 5. And that is $1,400, right? I come from the world of the Mofo desktop, the Evolver desktop, the Tetra desktop. You're getting polyphonic synths from Dave Smith, legacy designer, for less than $800-$700. There's nothing like that, and I criticize them for not doing that. I don't think the world needs another $3,000 synthesizer at all. I don't think that collectors need to be the only people who can have the synthesizers that they want. And I don't know if that's wrong for me saying that, it creates a sort of elitism. And while I sit here as a person who has a Arturia Polybrew on the ground, not using it, I understand that if I weren't in the position I were in, I'd still be maxing out Guitar Center credit cards to afford Dave Smith synthesizers. And that's my criticism.
I think he's been riding a nostalgia wave. I mean, since getting the name obviously back.
Yes.
Since then, there's been, I guess he's doing a service to all those people who are crying out for old analog bits and pieces, like redoing the Prophet 5, which was my dream synth when I was a kid.
Yes.
Ever since I saw Mike Lindup playing a Prophet 5, as I was a huge Level 42 fan as a kid, that was the synth that I wanted and played with in shops. So the fact that
but wait,
back,
do you own a Prophet 5 remake?
No, of course not. Of course not. Exactly. I can't afford that and Eurorack.
Exactly. And I think that's becomes the problem.
It does. Yeah.
Everyone wanted it, but who can afford it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also I think all the people who jones after the Prophet 5, realistically, they want that old Prophet 5 that they heard that time, not the new Prophet 5 that they can buy off the shelf. Because I will say, I heard one of the last Prophet 5 Rev 3s at Sequential or at Dave Smith Instruments in 2017 when I went up there. I heard it being played, and that to me was the most like magical synthesizer I ever heard. And it had all those qualities of the 19, that era, the 80s, 70s. It had that thing. When I hear the Prophet 5s from the new created ones, it's not the same. And I think it's not the same because it's not old.
Yeah.
It's not been around. It's not been decaying. And that's what you're hearing, I think. That's what I heard. I didn't hear pristineness. I heard old and imperfect. And that's what made it special. So, I don't know, the nostalgia wave. I mean, Behringer is the perfect example of the nostalgia wave. So they make a lot of money, and I'm not going to say any more about Behringer. I love Behringer. Everything's great. Behringer's a great company. Fantastic.
They've actually really lost out, I think, over the problem with the components. That's been a major problem for them. But plenty more things to come, I imagine. There was something in my head I was going to move to that I've now forgotten.
Does Behringer have anything left to copy at this point? And not copy, I'm just saying everyone copies everything. I want to bring this up. This is actually an interesting point, and I thought of this the other day. As much as people get so upset about Behringer cloning other things from manufacturers or whatnot, in the world, and people hating it, right? In the world of audio, right? Professional audio, right? Universal Audio or UREI, whoever, I don't even know, created the LA2A, right? The compressor, the very famous compressor, right? How many times has the LA2A been cloned by every manufacturer around the world, right? And I don't hear people being like, go buy an original $4,500 LA2A or else. Like, these companies have to die. It's like I have an LA3A clone from the Swedish company, right? I love LA3A. I'm not going to buy an LA3A original, and I don't think there's a lot of people who are really mad. Like, it's a weird how it's a different thing while in the same bubble, right? Like, how many 1176 clones have been made over the years, right? But I don't see people going to those pages and being like, "Oh, buy an original Universal Audio 1176 or nothing." Like, it's just weird, and it's all audio. It's like, I don't know, maybe a lot of tribalism or something around something that really doesn't
There
matter
is
that
that.
much.
Yeah, there's tribalism, there's elitism. I think similarly. I think in many ways though we're out the other side of that. I think that. I think to start with, there was a certain amount. There's two camps have either been upset about it because it's devaluing somehow these classic synthesizers, and the other half being, well, it makes it accessible to more people, more democratic, that kind of thing. Both of those things have got ideas. I think I think those questions with Behringer have kind of dissipated because everyone's come to their senses to some degree over the amount of cloning and copying we always see. I mean, Doepfer, started off building Moog filters for his Eurorack. He didn't start with, I've got a new idea for a filter. No, he borrowed what was already out there, and so there's a certain amount of, we have to check our biases and just go, oh no, I'm upset with Behringer because they're a massive company that's making a load of money and there's something wrong about that. It needs to be a boutique. I need to, it needs to be hand built by this person or that person. So I think it's silly, but that's what we.
All I know is whenever someone says, I just want it to be built boutique and blah, 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 which I can understand, you'll pay the price in 15 years. That's going to be the problem, right? I continue to harp on modal I want a 002 for modal, right? I will never be able to afford a modal 002 because modal was a boutique company who made this thing one time. They'll never make it again, which sucks. But you go on Reverb and try to find a modal 002, the price just keeps going up every year. Yeah. I saw a modal 002 the other day for like $10,000. Like stop. Like something has to stop. So I know that I could sit here with a OB6 and be like, yeah, like no to like elitism or whatever. But the smaller the runs, the more people are going to get you for it in the future. So I don't know. And also, I don't really think Behringer making a monopoly decreased the price of any of the original monopolys. Like, just
no, I don't think so. I think that's an excuse for people to big up their own collection of synthesizers. But I mean, ultimately, Behringer kind of it's quite, in some ways, it's quite fascinating following what they were doing. There was a point where they had everything almost right. I remember there was, excuse me, there was a super booth a couple of years ago when they brought in the RD8, they brought in the MS-101 and the ARP, I think, all at the same time, and they had different YouTubers. DivKid was there, this guy was there, all sort of doing a product release, an announcement over the super booth. And they had the guys from Midas, who were the engineers in Manchester. Yes. They were all there talking about it. And they were in the ascendancy, and everything was just going to go, this is going to be great. Okay, so it's a copy of an SH-101, but we actually get to play an SH-101, kind of. That's fantastic. And then they unfortunately made the decision to be arseholes. And that just, and everything just kind of went, everything sort of fell apart. And it just came down to this odd behavior, this odd spat of behavior that just made people lose their minds, and maybe quite rightly so, because it was just so odd. They almost, but anyway, the by, I very nearly had Dan from Behringer on this, on the live streams this week. Very near, this close, because he was sorely tempted, but he had too many channels to run it through. But I do hope to do a live stream with him at some point in the future. This is Dan who does the demo videos for them at the moment, and because I think it's interesting.
Ring light Dan.
What? Who? Yes, that's right. That's right. He's in a very small cupboard somewhere doing these things with a single ring light. That's right. Yeah. So, and I think they're fascinating. I'm a big believer in conversation. Regardless of what it is, what the subject matter is. If we can talk about it, that's got to be a positive thing. And so, having the opportunity to talk to someone from Behringer about all these things, not in a way to go, you did this, but in a way to go, so what's this, and what's this about, and what's the future? I think that would be interesting. So I hold out hope that may happen in the future. That'd be a great thing.
Yeah, like what's it really like? Because I think so many people this is the biggest issue with, I think, the internet and having like channels of discussion of things. Half the time it's just speculation. Like I
Hmm.
feel like when it comes to things, when it like Behringer things, right? It's like you're supposed to have some emotion attached to a company, which is bizarre to me. I don't have any emotion. It's just a company. It's like me having emotion to Honey Nut Cheerios. That's what
Mm.
it's like. It's like, no one cares. And if you care, you may need to seek help. But that said, I think that there's so much like, oh, there's some evil plan that some evil person is like deciding at these companies to do things that are specifically like bad. Like some conversation, some overt conversation about do bad things, you know? Whereas I just think like any company, I've worked for companies before, corporations,
Yeah.
those types of faceless things that come down, orders, directives, you don't know these people. These are just faceless names in an email thread where people are CC'd and you're supposed to move on with a thing. It's just, I don't want to say it's just business, but it's just like, it's not as nefarious. Like when people think like, oh, you did this because you're nefarious, like you're thinking nefarious things. It's just like, sometimes people don't know. Sometimes people are just doing.
Hmm.
Like and I'm sure if you had a conversation with him and he was very honest, maybe he'd be like, I don't know what's going on. Like, really, I'm doing these things and I love these products and that's
Yeah.
all. Like, I'm not part of this Illuminati to clone everything or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
maybe I hope for the best.
yeah, hope for the best. I think you've got to be optimistic ultimately. I mean, the thing that comes to mind often when talking about these issues is that if you're a kid and you got $100, you've worked your ass off in your
Yes,
paper round, you've got
exactly.
100 quid, and you pop down to Guitar Centre or whatever, you can buy a Crave, you can buy an MS-101 maybe almost, and buy just a flipping amazing little synthesizer
Hmm.
that you would not have been able to do
Hmm.
5 years ago, 10 years ago. It would have been impossible. But now you
Yeah,
can, and that's amazing. And they don't care about the
it is.
politics. They don't care about what's written on the box. They just know that they can buy a flipping synthesizer with their hard-earned little bit of cash, and that's awesome.
I think people don't sometimes realize how defeating it can be to see such a high price on things. And yes, I was 18 before all the Behringer and all this clone stuff came out in a way. I went to Guitar Center in Hollywood. I saw the little fatty for sale for like 12 or $1,300, like as an 18-year-old
Hmm.
music student. And I literally said, like outwardly to myself, I will never be able to afford this. Like I said it like aloud. Like I mean, I'm either gonna go to a life of crime, or I will never afford this. And I don't think that's how people should feel. I don't. Um, and maybe companies think that everyone's eventually going to make enough money to afford these types of things, but I just don't think that's true on average, and I don't think that should be, because most people do things for hobbies. And I don't think sometimes that a $3,000 thing for a hobby is really always in people's wheelhouses. And I don't know. I can relate as someone who really was like, I'll never. And sometimes it's like like it's ridiculous to me because I'm just like, oh, cool. I'm still that same kid in a way, but like a company will send me like any synthesizer I want. And in a weird way, it doesn't feel good anymore because,
Mm.
you know, it's it's I know that I'm not like everyone else in that sense. And I guess I sort of, I don't know. I I just realize it's a very fortunate but also kind of a jaded like way to be, you
It
know?
is, yeah. Yeah, it has two sides to it. I mean, the flip
Yeah.
side to the kid going and buying a synth as well. He may well be giving money to a company that does terrible things, but he doesn't necessarily know about that. And maybe later in life he will grow up to understand that, and that will be something different. But there's this weird there's this the whole weirdness around Behringer comes down to that idea that you feel bad about owning something. and that should never have. You should never feel that. You should never.
Not a music instrument.
No,
like,
you should never feel bad about owning a musical instrument, and that's a weird relationship that for somehow Behringer have managed to give us. They've given us this weird feeling about some of their gear, or some of us anyway, and that's a shame. That's unnecessary. That seems to be a result of what's gone on with them, and that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't be doubting ourselves. We shouldn't be having to wonder, well, is it morally right for me to purchase this synthesizer? That doesn't seem like anything we should be having to think about. And that's some of the weirdness, I think.
Plus, anyway. I mean, everything's made in the same place almost at this point. So it's like that. It's like that. There's like a joke from like The Simpsons from years ago about like Duff. There's like the beers like Duff Light, Duff regular, Duff, right? And that's how I think sometimes about the companies, right? It's literally like all the same thing, right? All the same parts and pieces going into one big tube, right? And then being funneled out. Like one is like sequential, one is like modal, and then one is like Behringer, right? But it's all coming from the same pipeline, right? And it's just people, how to write on their piece what it is, designed in the UK or something, like assembled in wherever else, right? And then like designed in Texas, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, it's really all coming from the same pipe. And I think sometimes and I'm not saying I know exactly, I'm just saying that's how I feel about so much stuff. Is it's just, these are the same components for the most part. And they're just being marketed and priced differently, maybe.
I'm sure there's lots of people who would argue about that. Funny enough, tomorrow night I've got Philip Taysom from Modal Electronics on. I'm talking to him. So
Modal, totally not the same. Great company.
Yeah.
Not part of the funnel.
I'll be putting ideas to him. So yes, as Robin says,
tell him the 002.
Yeah. So what would be?
Tell him to re-release the 002, Robin, please.
Okay, I will. I'll make a note of that. So what is?
I'll come to the chat. I'll be there.
What is your dream synth then at the moment? So from now,
the Modal 002.
002. That's
Modal
a funny,
002.
great big white thing.
Yeah, from the UK.
Yeah, and I played on one at Synth Fest, I think, a few years ago.
That's still my dream. I mean, there's not one synth that I don't own that I'd want. I think people think that I'd want something, but I don't. Like, I can't, there's no room. Robin, there's no room.
No.
I mean, I'm probably going to send the OB6 back. It's sort of on, it's a loan to own kind of a situation. Like, if I get something from these companies, like I can get it for maybe cheaper price if I want to buy it or something. But like, it's just not even practical for me to own one more hardware synth more than I own. So the only synthesizer that I would ever buy again, like I don't own it, but I'm saying that I would buy as my dream, is the Modal 002. And that's only because I always wanted it back then. And I guess I have nostalgia. I only really want things that I wanted at some point. Like, I can't imagine what company's going to release something that's going to be more useful than, say, the Waldorf Quantum. It's like, that thing is like a giant supercomputer with knobs and focused on music. It's like, what? And I have one, so I don't know.
So what do you make of the new Rhodes then? Is that more in your ballpark?
Oh man. Once again, it's just too expensive and not practical. Like, I know that something like that probably costs a lot of money. It's an acoustic instrument, striking tines. It's might as well be a piano, in a sense. It's a percussion instrument, but I think what's his name? Sanjay C ordered one, right? Sanjay C ordered one. He customized one. I think his was like, did they really? I mean, those things are like $8,000 that they customize. Yeah. That's too much. Sanjay C be making videos every week, and Dr. Mix might make 2 videos a week. And he's, these guys are like content churn factories with tons of views, right? Like, I'm in a way, I'm like the indie guy over on the side, like, you know, just hoping,
There's a lot of us there.
yeah, it's just
We're all
like,
sort of in a club.
yeah, $8,000 on a
Yeah.
thing that I could do and I'm not saying it's exactly the same. It's just, I want to say that the new Rhodes is like, it's, it's 500 times more expensive than something else. No, it's probably like 8,000. It's like so much more expensive versus the usefulness of it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I recently got like a Manly compressor, right? An L-up compressor, which is like $3,000, right? But I'm borrowing it. And it's like, yeah, it's like 2,000 times more expensive, but it's maybe like 10% better. Like realistically, like real world better. It's like a little bit better. And I don't know if I'm the person who can afford that to some point, but like
Mm.
I like using VST Rhodes. I forgot what it is, but I have this, it's called Velvet or something, I forget. And just because I play Rhodes so much in the box, I want that MIDI, I want that recall ability. I don't want,
Yes.
it's not so easy with me when it comes to like Rhodes or piano sounds. So
Yeah.
mm,
You're a big
I
fan
don't
of the SV1 though, yeah? Did you get an SV2 in the end? The Korg?
know. I would really like one because I don't like to play with headphones when I play piano.
Mm.
And yeah, Korg should send me an SV2 because I don't know. They just should or something. I don't know. I feel like I've never worked with so many of the companies. Like often, like when a company like wants me to do a video, it's just like I don't want to do that video, so I don't. But with Korg, I've done so many videos where it's like I enjoy the things like the Volcas. I enjoy all
Yeah.
their Volcas. So it's like, I mean, I'm basically giving them free marketing all the time for their stuff. But I'm gonna do it anyway. So maybe they know they have the cheat code with me. Um, but the SV2 would be so great just because of the built-in speakers.
Yeah.
But it's almost $2,000 for that thing, and my SV1 works flawlessly, and so it's kind of, I don't know. You can't improve on perfection almost. The SV1 to me is the best feeling and everything keyboard. It just doesn't have the built-in speakers, which would be the kind of trump card for
Yeah.
me.
And I guess in some ways that's what the Rose is going for as well. I mean, you need to own a penthouse flat or a flat overlooking Central Park in New York really to have the Rhodes, or Hyde Park, let's say, because it's British and all that.
Yeah.
But it needs to be sat in this space where you'd normally have a baby grand piano, something different, and it's
I
it's an electroacoustic instrument, as you say. That it needs that. It needs to have the lifestyle which follows on.
Yeah, can you, like, here's my real thought, right? Is like if you're a working musician in today's age, right? So I would really assume most working musicians, I'm talking full-time working, probably make what between, and you can make the equivalent of like pounds or whatever, but it's like I would say you're probably making between 35,000 and like 70,000, right? I'm saying working. I'm saying gigs, whatever you can make online, whatever studio stuff you can do, remote work, right? 30 and 70,000 a year, right? So those are working people. Does it
Mm.
even really make financial sense to buy anything that's $2,000 to $3,000 unless it's purely for work? So when the companies make all this stuff, like when Rhodes is making an $8,000 customized new Rhodes, if you're only making like 50,000 a year, it's like not even accessible to the audience in which would truly like benefit from it. It
Yeah.
becomes the item for the 150,000 and above person who just like every now and then, or the person who was in, who, went to college, but then now they said, F this, I'm a doctor now or something.
Mm.
Like it just kind of seems strange. Just because, Not saying I love music and it's great, but it's just it's really the income that you make as maybe a normal average musician is
Mm.
just less.
Well, there's an element of collectibleness. There's an element of wealthy people who just want to invest in musical instruments as opposed to paintings on the wall or cars and that kind of thing. There's always going to be that market out there, I guess.
Yeah.
But the rest of us have to. Well, we're not making do. We have some fantastic tools around us, so we don't need to be. We don't need the extremes. Perhaps is what we're saying.
Yes. Any good music, as someone always said, like Slash will sound better on you on a Daisy Rock guitar than, if you got his $80,000 vintage whatever. Like it's still in the musician, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's it's something that's kind of downplayed sometimes, because I feel like sometimes I get a little cynical, and I'm probably cynical in general, but like when someone's like, what piece of gear should I buy? And the first thing I think to myself is, when's the last time you practiced? Like,
thanks, Dad.
Like, what are you trying to get here? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just like me, like thinking like,
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I think, I think we feel that sometimes. Because you get, as a person for the camera, you get bombarded with these questions. What should I buy? What should I buy?
What's the best?
Yeah, what's the best? I mean, in fact, I write for a website called Careers in Music, and that's all listicles. It's all best ofs. And it's remarkable. I mean, it's not the most edifying work, but it's steady and that kind of thing. I try to make it as interesting as possible, but there's a huge thirst for best of articles, best of listicles.
It sells.
It does. It sells. It gets views and clicks, and people are always fascinated by that. And whenever you've got a purchasing decision coming up, you tend to put best microphone under 500 quid. Stick that into Google and see what happens. We all do it.
That's what people are searching for anyway.
But little did you know, it's me who's answering that question. He doesn't know anything about microphones at all.
Oh, man, don't let them know.
No, don't tell me about that. No, I do my research, man. I do. Oh, a question from the chat. Have you tried any Black Corporation synthesizers? The Xerxes or the Kimiji or the Deckard's Dream even.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you just had to say Deckard's Dream, and I know. I've only tried Deckard's Dream in Perfect Circuit, the store. I haven't tried any of their other stuff, but I do. Too many sliders. I don't like sliders. There's too many sliders. So I don't know.
You heard it here, folks. Too many sliders is a problem.
I'm not a sliders. I'm really not a sliders person. Like, I know it sounds bad, but I'm just not. If it has more sliders than the Juno 106, I don't want it. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah, the chat. I think the chat was like, "Are they going to talk about people from the chat? Are they going to?" I was like, "Yeah, see, we did."
So yeah, I mean, we've hit a couple of hours now, so we probably better be thinking about wrapping this up before everyone falls asleep or gets too numb or something. But so if there's any last minute questions that people have in the chat that want to throw this way, then do so. I mean, are there any classics from legendary synthesizers of old that I mean, the Modular 002 we've talked about, but are there any other ones that you feel you missed or would have liked to have had back in the day?
Anything pre-MIDI, I say no. I've toyed with the idea for years of making the video that I've really wanted to make, which is why I refuse to buy vintage synthesizers. But once again, I don't want to become a conversation piece in it's like, I know I accept that it's fine to make certain videos like I moved away from Eurorack, something very personal. But once you start to say vintage and things, you start to bring in this the world of trolls of, So the only thing that I would probably own again if I had a big studio of like just BS, like posters like types of thing, is the sequential multi-track. It's not known it's like the bigger of the sequential 6-track, so not a lot of people really know about it, but I still just love the sound of the sequential multi-track 1985, but does have MIDI, and that's it. No Jupiter 8s, no CS80s. I don't want any of that stuff. I mean, what's his name? Junkie XL, right? Junkie XL. I watched his video where he's like, I'm getting rid of everything that's old, and now he only has like 10, and it's all new. Except he kept the one MIDI Moog Model D, but aside from that, he's like, no, I have like a Quantum, I have a 002, I have a Moog 1. At some point, he's a professional. You reach the point where you're just like, we can't do this anymore. There's too much upkeep. There's too much.
Yeah.
I'm sending this thing into the shop every time. It's not staying in tune. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been the commentary from before, that there was this moving out of vintage into MIDI into digital synthesizers was a relief for everyone who did music seriously for a living, because suddenly everything worked reliably and was the same every time. You're no longer having to fiddle with all this stuff. You no longer had Rick Wakeman pouring beer down your neck as you're trying to retune his oscillators for him. It was a new dawn, and it's become this rose-tinted view we have of the past and how awesome those things would have been to own, which as items and objects, old objects do have a value to them because we made things differently back then. There's definitely an element of that, but in usability, no, you have to let those sorts of things go.
Yeah, it's just like saying something without MIDI sounded better because it didn't have MIDI, right? Something that in no way interacts with the sound quality as a circuit, right? It's like, okay, like something with only MIDI is now better than things with MIDI over USB. It's like, okay.
Well, then you get into MIDI and MIDI 2.0 then, don't you? I mean, can you hear the 128 steps in that filter because it's MIDI? Can you hear that? Or does it have to be, if it was only 16-bit, then we wouldn't hear that horrible stepping that we get.
As musicians, it's only us hearing it. Everyone who's consuming your music doesn't hear it, right? So that's why I always say, for the person who's like, oh, which synth should I get? Maybe focus on the melody line. Oh, what compressor did you use for that thing? It's like, nobody's gonna ask that who's actually like consuming music, right? Like of the million people who buy Adele's album first week, there's gonna be like maybe 1,000 people of the million asking themselves like, oh, what compressor did Adele use for the vocals? While the 9,990,000 people are just saying like, oh wow, it sounds great. That's where it ends for them. And I know that you should be making music for yourself, but also like be practical. I mean, and in practical terms, if I made a record with all analog and then I made a record with all digital, the practical sense is that probably 50% would say that it was one way and 50% would say the other way, but it wouldn't, in the end, nobody's saying, oh, I know exactly what that was. So that's how I really look at it. It's just not that important. Like it's just music.
Yeah, it is. And we all have our different views on that. We all have things that inspire us. And it's, again, coming back to just to end this video, obviously, by saying that Eurorack is fantastic and no one should ever leave it, is that it's an inspirational space. I think there's a different process going on when you're writing music either to order or for a reason, or you just want to sit down and you want to fiddle and you want to lose yourself in those signal paths and the possibility of tones and interest and stuff that happens. And I think for me, Eurorack offers up for me that opportunity that I don't find in other bits and pieces. But having said that, I can also sit down with a hardware synth and enjoy playing that for hours. I can play a Rhodes VST for hours as well, enjoying that, running it through different effects and bits and pieces. But what has worked the most for me in recent times is just to play with the patching and the signals and the rearranging of the modules and the building the flipping module over there that I'm trying to do. Can't point the right way. All of those things blend into this idea of what Eurorack is about, and I find that continue to find that exciting and interesting. And it's interesting that people find other ways of exploring inspiration and music as well. There's a ramble for you.
Yes, I don't hate Eurorack.
Yeah, well done. Well done. So yeah, I think all right. Well, let's wrap it up then. I think that's been great. Thank you so much for talking to me, Stephen. That's been it's flown by for me at any rate. I've had a lovely time.
I know. Crazy. Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. To be sort of on this side of YouTube where like people actually see that I exist versus my typical YouTube on my second channel where I get to stay in the shadows. This will actually look like people will think, oh, he's still alive. Wow.
Yeah, it's good. And you're doing the real work. That's what's important. That's what we love.
Yeah.
You're doing the real thing.
That's all. I still like to make music. It's just sometimes the treadmill of the world of content creation is much different than, it's kind of like music business or music, right? Those aren't really the same, So I like making music, but I don't always want to be involved in the business of making music.
That's great.
Content.
Yes. Content, not artist. Or is it content? Oh, no, let's not get around that again. Yes, great. So thanks ever so much. And what I'll do is I'll cut you off. Just stay on the line, though, Stephen. I'll chat to you in a second, but I will just talk about what's going on. If I can find the button. I've lost my buttons. I'll just talk about what's coming up and bid everyone good night. But thanks ever so much for talking to us, Stephen. That's been great.
See y'all.
See ya. So, yes, there we are. So coming up for the rest of the week, tomorrow I've got Philip from Modal Electronics here. We're going to talk about probably things like the Argon 8, the Cobalt 8. What on earth happened to that little mini synth thing that they were doing and stuff like that. Ideas about larger synthesizers. And, of course, I'll ask him about the 002. What on earth happened to that? And can you just put one together from spare parts for Stephen? That would be really helpful. So there's that coming up tomorrow. Well, Wednesday night, this was not advertised previously, but because last Friday we were building that Erica Synths VCO together, which I thought would take half an hour, no problem. Like 3 hours in, and I was only on page 10 of page 50 of this build. So I kind of figured it's going to take a little bit longer. So I've been working on it today. I'll do a bit more work on it tomorrow. But on Wednesday night, we will get back together around the soldering iron and hopefully put the VCO together. Now, the manual has been extraordinary. I've learned all sorts of things, and my mind has been fairly blown in the whole of this process. But hopefully, in doing this series on these modules, it will get better and more fluid, and we'll understand more as we go, as we slowly build this Erica Synths Eurorack system. That's going to be very interesting. So we're going to do that Wednesday night again, 8 o'clock, a couple of hours of soldering. That'll be lovely. Thursday night is at Gringo's in Norwich. We're gonna try this live stream. I don't know. I'm going to set it up anyway. I'll also try to capture it on a regular camera so that if the live stream doesn't work, I can upload it afterwards. So I'm going to attempt to do a live performance there, which will be exciting. And then we were going to get together on Friday night to talk about the live streams and just kick back and have a beer. I've now postponed that to Sunday night because on the ProSynth Network they've got Martin Ware in as a guest, and I don't want to clash with that on Friday. So instead we're going to bump it till Sunday. Sunday is we'll also talk about the Molten Monthly, which I'm going to make this week. So all this stuff is going on. I hope that's as clear as mud. So there we go. So that's this evening. Thanks again to Stephen for joining us. That's been great. You can check him out on Noir Et Blanc Vie on the Twitters and places like that. He hangs out most on Twitter, I think I would say. And thanks very much for joining us in the chats. And in the meantime, go and make some tunes. And I'll hit the outro. Wait for it. Where did I put that? Oh, that's here. Cheers then.